This is the new 2026 Asus TUF A14. And from the outside, basically nothing has changed. But from the inside, this is a completely different beast. But does that still make it the best value 14-inch gaming laptop? Let's find out. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. Like I said, from the outside, the TUF A14 is practically unchanged from the last 2 years. But that's not a bad thing at all. It's not over-the-top gamery and actually looks quite professional. It's got a metal top lid and bottom, so it feels very sturdy. And while the inside is made of plastic, it's built incredibly well and feels very premium. The palm rest actually has a sort of matte feeling to it and feels very comfortable to rest your hands on. The TUF A14 is also very thin for a gaming laptop, actually even thin for a regular laptop. And it weighs basically nothing, making it a perfect portable machine. But inside this tiny package is a lot of power. With 32 GB of RAM and the Ryzen Max Plus 392, it's nothing short of impressive. The 392 is a fast 12-core CPU with an integrated Radeon 8060S GPU, which is the current fastest iGPU on any laptop. Now, if this sounds familiar, this chip is literally just a Ryzen 395 with 4 less cores, which makes it quite a bit cheaper to produce. Now, the TUF A14 can also be spec'd with a regular CPU and up to an RTX 5060, but you might not want to, because a big advantage of this model is its shared memory. So for example, on this model, you could either have 24 GB of RAM and 8 GB of VRAM, which is already quite good. But what you can also do is give 16 GB to that CPU and another additional 16 GB to its iGPU, which is quite a bit for a graphics card. And it can actually be spec'd up to 64 GB of shared memory, which means up to 56 GB of VRAM for that iGPU. And for VRAM-intensive workloads like big 3D modeling projects or even locally run AIs, that is very interesting. Now, for a 14-inch laptop, the TUF A14 has an excellent port selection, having basically everything you could ever need, even a micro SD slot. And the charging brick it comes with also isn't massive. For 200 watts, it's actually very manageable. But you could always use a smaller brick as well, since it supports USB-C charging up to 100 watts. It does have 2 USB-C ports, but unfortunately you can only charge it through the one on the left side. Now let's look at its keyboard. It does have a backlight, but only in a white color, but it can get very bright, with 3 different brightness settings. It also has these 4 macro keys at the top, which are very handy. Now as for the keys themselves, this is, and has been for a while, my favorite keyboard for typing of all time. The keys are very thumpy, they give nice feedback, and it's just very comfortable to type on. These are the same keys as on the old Flow X13 and as on the new ProArt PX13, and these have aged very well. Moving down, we have its trackpad. And for how small this laptop is, it's actually quite large. It's made of glass, so it feels sturdy and smooth. And the clicks themselves feel very satisfying. They're quiet, but still very clicky. Moving up, we have its display. And while this 1600p 165Hz IPS panel won't blow your socks off, it's actually quite good. It has nice looking, vibrant colors and pretty good contrast. But it isn't an OLED, so in very dark rooms you might see some IPS bleeding on black screens. But at 165 Hz, this is awesome for playing games. Combined with fast pixel response times, you're gonna have no issues at all with fast-paced scenarios. It also has a way too high resolution for its size, so it is incredibly sharp. And at a maximum of 400 nits of brightness, it's still pretty bright, and should be enough for even outside use. It also has a matte display coating, so it handles reflections quite well, even in very bright scenarios. And its hinge goes back a full 180 degrees, which is nice. And this hinge also feels very sturdy. You can easily open it up with one hand, and you're basically never gonna have any kind of wobbling. So overall, be it for playing games, watching movies, or even regular use, this screen is really nice. Now, when we get to speakers, smaller laptops are usually not the best. But after the Zephyrus G14 changed those expectations, how does its cousin the A14 sound? It sounds really good. It's got quite a lot of bass, it gets pretty loud, and overall, it just sounds great. You do need to set it to the music mode in Dolby settings, which makes it a little bit quieter. And it does only have down-firing speakers on the bottom, so it is a tiny bit muffled. But these are easily in the top 10 of best-sounding laptop speakers. The webcam isn't anything special, but it's got nice colors and is definitely good enough for web conferences. The microphone, however, sounds very good and is a lot better than on 99% of other laptops. But let's get to the important stuff, performance. This is a tiny laptop, but with that Ryzen 392, it packs quite a punch. So how fast is it really? Well, in Cinebench R23, its single-core score is a little bit last gen. But its multi-core score competes with some way thicker, way bigger laptops, which is very impressive. And in 3D Mark TimeSpy, we see that 8060S shine. It basically performs like a laptop RTX 4070, and even competes with some lower power 5070 GPUs, so it really is quite fast. But this model specifically has that shared memory, which is very unique, because with this much VRAM, you can run local AI models quite well. LLMs do prefer NVIDIA GPUs, but this AMD iGPU still handles it just fine. It does struggle a bit if you try to run heavier models, especially on the CPU, but even image generation runs just fine. Just make sure to pick the right model and allocate the right amount of RAM to either the CPU or the GPU, and you could run basically any local AI you'd want to. But what about real-world mixed CPU and GPU workloads? Well, this is a gaming laptop, so let's see how it handles some actual games.
What did you do, man? No!
So like expected, the TUF A14 can play games just fine. At its full resolution of 1600p, it basically never dropped below 60 FPS, even in the heaviest of games, which should be more than good enough for most people. But I would actually recommend playing games on this laptop at 1200p instead. 1200p at 14 inches is basically indistinguishable from 1600p, and it's a lot less taxing on your GPU. And that means you get considerably higher frame rates, and a smoother gaming experience is always better than a slightly higher res one. All in all, this laptop can run basically any game, big 3D modeling projects, and even local AIs. So I think it should fit basically everyone's needs. But none of that matters if it gets as hot as a nuclear power plant, right? It does have quite a thin body, so how does its cooling system perform? Well, it does very, very well. Its processor never went above 81 degrees Celsius, which is very impressive for a laptop. Its iGPU was about the same, but these are basically the same chips, so it doesn't really matter. But just like on the ProArt PX13, it stays even cooler if you prop it up a little to get more airflow. So if you want to overclock it in that manual mode, I definitely recommend doing that. This single APU is very power efficient, so it doesn't need much power to run well, and less power usage means less heat. But does that also mean less noise? Well, it's not silent, but it's definitely quieter than the average gaming laptop. And you can make it a whole lot quieter by putting it in the silent performance profile, but that also makes it a little bit slower. But under light loads, this laptop stays absolutely silent. But an efficient processor should mean great battery life, right? Well, I tested its battery in two different scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use test, I played a YouTube video until its battery died, with its display at 80% brightness, at 60 Hz, and with the keyboard backlight turned off. And weirdly, it only lasted a little over 7 hours, which really isn't that impressive. But something isn't right here. Because the ProArt PX13, which I reviewed before, has that Ryzen 395, which is basically the exact same chip, but with 4 more cores. Architecturally, these two chips are identical. Hell, these two laptops even share the same 73 Wh battery. So they should get the exact same battery life, right? Which makes me think this is a firmware or software issue that just makes it use a bit more power on battery. I did notify Asus of this, and they told me this definitely wasn't right. And they're actively working on a fix, so fingers crossed it'll get better. In the gaming test, I played Battlefield 1 until its battery died, with the same settings as before. And again, it only lasted a bit more than an hour, while it should last almost double of that, just like the ProArt PX13 did. However, it did perform the exact same as it would while connected to a charger, which is really cool. But again, that could just be this unit. It might change later on, so I'll keep you guys updated on this issue. Now, smaller laptops obviously have less internal space, so how upgradable is the A14? Well, actually better than I expected. Unfortunately, it does have soldered memory, so RAM upgrades are impossible. But it actually has 2 M.2 SSD slots, which is very rare for a 14-inch laptop. And it also has a Wi-Fi card slot, which could be handy in the future. With an APU with shared memory, its RAM needs to be very fast, and currently with SODIMM slots, that's just not a possibility. So far, the TUF A14 has been great. But how much does it cost? Well, as of recording, this exact model of the A14 can be found for around $2,000 to $2,200 and that's quite a bit more expensive than the regular A14. A refreshed A14 with a Ryzen 9 465 and an RTX 5060 should also release soon, and that one's likely going to be considerably cheaper. And last year's TUF A14 with an RTX 5060 is a whole lot cheaper. So it's clear that this model has a slight premium to it. As for European prices, it's probably gonna be around 2,300 to 2,500 euros, but I haven't seen it on sale anywhere yet. And with the current RAM prices, I mean, God knows what anything's gonna cost in a month. Alright, let's get to a conclusion. Is the 2026 Asus TUF A14 worth it? Well, if you need a laptop with a lot of memory or VRAM, absolutely. I mean, this is an amazing machine. But if you don't care about the shared memory stuff and you just want to play games on it, or hell, even just use it normally, this thing probably isn't for you. The TUF A14 is a really good little laptop. It's built incredibly well and is very portable with its small size and low weight. It handles basically everything you throw at it, be it games or applications. It's got a great screen and, in my opinion, one of the best keyboards on a laptop. And with that shared memory, it can do some crazy stuff, like big 3D modeling projects or even run local AI models. But unless you're gonna actively use that shared memory feature, it's just way too expensive. Like I said, last year's TUF A14 with an RTX 5060 can do basically everything this model can, but is way cheaper. And for gaming and most other tasks, it's gonna perform almost exactly the same as this one. I mean hell, even a Zephyrus G14 is cheaper than this A14 model. So in short, if you need a lot of memory or VRAM, get the A14 or the ProArt PX13, which has even more. But if you don't care about shared memory, either get last year's TUF A14 or wait until that refresh model of this one. Or hell, even get a Zephyrus G14. But this laptop is considerably cheaper than the ProArt PX13, which I last reviewed. And since they have very similar processors with that same shared memory, how do they compare? Well, let's find out in the next video, where I'll be comparing those two head-to-head in full detail. Now let me give a huge shout out to my YouTube members. Soundwife, Thomas, Inky, Mr. Frosty Dude, Dropzone1, Martijn Snijkers, Flimsy, Aki, Mr. Nuke, Sebastian, Christian Sands, Real Elf, Eric the Red, Wesley Rose, Ghost Data, Walter, Anu Gadar, Abdullah, Lewis, and Ethan. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to content of mine, a shout out at the end of every video, and you'll also be supporting me as a creator to make these videos. And of course, you'll also be part of the Cool Guys Club, so you can use cool emojis like these in the comment section. So join the club if you're interested. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.
What are you gonna do, slap me?